here to talk to you about the Dialectical Behavior Therapy skill of mindful describing. So, since we're working on mindfulness skills, and since the entire backbone of dialectical behavior therapy really is mindfulness, let's start with a mindful moment ourselves. So go ahead and get into a comfortable, supportive, yet awake and aware position. For me, that's sitting up, but for you, that could mean lying down or maybe even standing. If you feel comfortable doing so, go ahead and close your eyes. Otherwise, it's okay to keep your eyes open and just soften your gaze. Look down towards your feet. Unfocus the eyes. Let's start by taking a few deeper than normal breaths. When we talked about the mindfulness skill of observing, we observed our breath, focusing on where we felt it the most, whether that was around our nose, our chest, diaphragm, or belly. So tune back into your breath, again picking up where you notice it the most. Our breath is something that is happening right now in this moment. So when we pay attention to it, just observing and noticing it, that's mindfulness. I'm going to ask you or invite you to add on a layer this time, which is to count your breaths. So 1 on your inhale and 2 on your exhale. 3 on your inhale, 4 on your exhale. Keep going like that until you get to 10. And when you reach 10, go ahead and start back over at 1 again. If you get distracted, you notice thoughts or sensations, or maybe something external to you, sounds. That's okay. Just come back to the counting. You can start again at 1 anytime. This distraction and returning to counting, that's mindfulness too, because we're noticing that our mind has wandered off and then redirecting our attention on the present moment again. All right, I will invite you now to tune into the sound of my voice and let your observation of your breath and your description of your breath fall. And now just kind of tune into your space a little bit more again. You might notice a chair if you're sitting in it, the support you feel in your back or your legs. You might start to notice the sounds around you. You might wiggle your toes or your fingers to bring some sensation and awareness to your body. And then when you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So you just did, again, another 2 to 3 minutes of mindfulness. This time, in addition to observing our breath, we layered on the counting, which is a version of describing, which is the DBT mindful skill that we're going to talk about today. we talked about observing first because you have to observe something in order to describe it, right? And the opposite, of course, is true. We can't describe something if we didn't observe it. And so in this way, learning to observe and then describe helps us kind of stick to the facts. In other words, we can't observe, and therefore we can't describe another person's thoughts, another person's feelings, another person's intentions or opinions, right? And so this process helps us utilize the wise mind that we talked about initially at the start of this. I'm going to give you 3 describer words that will help you. They will describe how we describe our observations. So we describe our observations non-judgmentally. We try to avoid putting on labels of good or of bad. Just know, I am hearing Dr. Owens talk right now. Dr. Owens is wearing a black turtleneck, right? You might like it or not like it. And those are the pieces we stay away from. So we stay away from the judgmental pieces. We do so one mindfully, which means when we're describing something, we're describing only that thing and nothing else. So one thing at a time. And we try to do so 3 effectively. So how do we describe? We put some words on our experience, right? So when we were doing the breath practice at the beginning, we were counting our breaths. That's a description. The first breath, the second exhale, right? So on and so forth. We might label what we experience, right? So for example, when I'm practicing mindfulness and I become distracted, what distracted me? I might label that as sound, or I might label it as a thought or a sensation in my body, right? And we try to kind of unglue our opinions or our judgments from what we are observing and describing. So an opinion or a judgment might look like I'm paying attention to my breath, and then I start to think about burritos, and I'm distracted. And I notice that. I say, I'm not supposed to be doing that. That's an opinion. That's a judgment, right? So we just say, thoughts about food. And then return to our breath, okay? So it's a much more neutral or equanimous practice. And we have a meditation on cultivating equanimity that we previously practiced, in a video for that as well, if you want to look into that a little bit more again. There is some pretty good research that describing is actually an emotion regulation strategy in and of itself, right? So right now we're in the mindfulness module of DBT, and emotion regulation is another module of DBT, but describing our experience can reduce the emotional intensity of it. We call this name it to tame it, right? So we can have feel like we have an increase in our temperature, rapid heart rate, sweaty palms, kind of some tingling and desire for action in our limbs and our hands and our feet, and a lot of, judgmental thoughts. And we can name that. Say, I'm feeling pretty angry right now. And the act of appropriately naming or accurately naming our emotional experience does result in a dip in the emotional intensity. So that's where name it to tame it comes from. That research goes even further to show that emotional granularity, which is the ability to really kind of touch in on exactly what that emotion is. So people who have more emotional granularity, they can distinguish in between anger and frustration and disgust and exhaustion, and all these different emotional states that they have. The amount of emotional granularity is associated with better well-being and dips in emotional intensity, along with actually a whole host of other things like less frequency of infectious diseases like colds and things like that. We also know that when you describe things, it's great to have a little bit of distance in between you and what you're describing, like you are a neutral observer, a little bit distant from the experience. So instead of saying, I am angry, say, I feel angry, right? I am angry is piece of my identity. Feels like it's never going to end, right? My identity is constant. As long as I'm alive. I feel angry is a state, right? And emotions are states. They rise, they fall. Okay. So let's do another little mindful practice, just another 2 to 3 minutes. So again, get into that upright and awake, yet comfortable and supportive position, whatever that looks like for you. Sitting, standing, lying, reclining. Closing your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. And let's just kind of sit back in our chair, imagining that when we do so, we're distancing ourselves just a little bit from our experience and particularly our thoughts. Now, as you quiet your mind, you might notice no thoughts, and that's okay. When you have no thoughts, you kind of have an empty conveyor belt in front of you. But the longer you spend quiet, pulled back, the more likely it is that some thoughts will start to pop. Some mental sensations will arrive. And as they do, you might label them. Thoughts about food. Thoughts about me. Thoughts about others. Planning thoughts. Past focused thoughts. Critical thoughts. You may label your thoughts in any way that feels right for you. Some people have general labels that they utilize for thoughts. Some people like to get a little more specific. I encourage you to do what feels most relevant for you, and if you're getting caught up with the specificity of it, it's okay to go general. We don't have to worry too much about which box we put each thought in. And so it's as though the thoughts are coming across on a conveyor belt, bouncing along, and as we see them come by, we pick them up and we put them in a particular box. Oh, here's a planning thought. Oh, here's a thought about others. I'll put that in this box. Or you can let that image, if you had it, of a conveyor belt and various boxes of thoughts fade from your mind. And if it doesn't feel like it fades too well, maybe we need to close the thoughts up. So we might close those boxes and put labels on them and go ahead and put them on a shelf in an organized fashion, whatever feels right to us. Some of us might get up and walk away from the boxes. Some of us might experience the boxes just fading from our mind, and others still may want to organize those boxes before they move on. Do what feels right for you. When you're done, go ahead and come back into your body. Feel the support of wherever you might be sitting, the ground, the chair, and tuning into the sound of my voice. When you feel yourself in this moment fully, take one last deeper than normal breath, and then open your eyes. So that was a mindfulness meditation that was focused on describing. And remember that dialectical behavior therapy is all about the practice, right? These are skills designed to build a life worth living. that's filled with emotion regulation, distress tolerance, meaningful relationships. And so in order to really be able to utilize a skill when we want to, we got to practice it. And so there's sort of 3 general ways to practice describing. And during this week, you might describe what you see outside yourself throughout the room. Just kind of gently labeling things. There's a picture behind me. There's an orchid next to me, right? You might also describe your thoughts, like we just did with the conveyor belt exercise, and or your feelings. Notice I'm feeling angry. I notice I'm feeling tired. I notice I'm feeling relaxed. And then finally, a 3rd way to practice describing is to describe your breathing, like we started with. Might describe an inhale is happening, an exhale is happening. Might notice our breath is shallow or deep. We might count our breaths. So the DBT Skills Training book by Marsha Linehan has a handout for describing that includes, I think, 15 plus different ways to practice describing. So pick 2, practice them in the next 7 days, and just note the effect that it has on you. Thanks for listening.